I'd like to call to order the February 13th meeting of Clive City Council. Will the clerk please call a roll?
Mayor Edwards,
Here.
Council members Weaver, McCoy,
Here.
Lanani,
Here.
Jenkins,
Here.
Clive.
Here. Very good. Would you all rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda. Second. Motion is second to approve the agenda. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those here say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Our agenda is approved. Next up, we have our citizen presentation. It's the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not the agenda. Pete, do we have anyone online? I'm not seeing anyone here at the council chamber.
Only staff online at this point.
Very good. We'll move into consent.
Approval.
Second. Motion second on consent. Further discussion? Giving her with council please vote and with clerk please.
Yes. Yes.
So consent is approved. We'll next move to the action items and we have a public hearing. I think Jeff will address that. Did we plan to seek public notice for item number one?
Yes, Your Honor, it was published in the Des Moines Register on January 27th, 2025, and actually all of them published on that day. They were all done.
Okay, very good.
Mayor Council, good evening. Yes, we're here for the public hearing for the Alice's Road construction project relating to property acquisitions. As we said out the start of this process, we said we would start it and hope nothing not have to use it. We have 4 of the 5 properties signed. The other one intends to sign on Monday, but has not yet signed. So as per the reason we started this was to make sure we don't put ourselves in a position of delaying the project. Recommendation is to go ahead and approve the resolution tonight and hopefully not have to use it.
But we understand there would be an option just to table resolution 16.
We can continue the public hearing, right?
Yes,
After
you
the
can
next
continue it.
consultation.
Public hearing.
That wouldn't affect the timetable at all.
No.
It's an option for you all. You're
I'll hear that. Okay, we have a motion to continue the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second to continue the public hearing. Further discussion? Seeing none, council please vote on continuing the public hearing until our next meeting.
Yes.
Please vote.
Yes.
And our public on the vote on our,
It didn't pass 5-0.
it passed 5-0. Let the record reflect that we've continued that public hearing till our next meeting. Very good. Jeff, you're up again. And again, we have published the appropriate public notice that you did on the first.
Okay, now we're looking at the actual bids for construction, and I'm very happy to give you some very good news on what we received. Well below the engineer's estimate, almost 9.8 million below, 1.6, excuse me, and bids were very tight, 13,000 between first and second on a $4 million project. We have worked with CTI before and recommend awarding to them.
Any questions for Jeff?
Move to close public hearing.
Motion second, close the public hearing. Further discussion? Seeing none, will council please vote on closing the public hearing?
Yes. Yes.
That's 5-0.
Very good. So, 5-0 vote, public hearing is closed.
Move the resolution approving plans and specifications.
Motion is second on plans and spec. Further discussion? Seeing none, with the council, please vote.
Yes, McCoy.
Post their vote.
Yes.
And the plans and specs are approved by a vote of 5-0.
Move the receipt of bids.
Motion is second to receive the bids. Further discussion? Seeing none, with the council, please vote. And with the clerk, please post the bid.
Yes, McCoy. Yes.
And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
With the resolution awarding the contract to Concrete Technologies Incorporated for $4,294,120.31.
Motion is second on the resolution. Further discussion? Seeing none, with the council, please vote. And with the clerk, please post that.
Yes. Yes. We might not be able to pay that 1 cent though in the future. With
Yeah,
that
we
31.
understand that. We'll have to figure
Okay.
that one out.
Okay, just checking, just make sure.
Thanks for the update. Before Jim comes forward, we'll take a slight pause. Thank you, Jim. We have the Elks here tonight. Jim, they've got money for us, so I hope you'll be patient. and understand. We always stop for money. So please come tell us, what you got for us.
Thank you all. We are the Elks Lodge number 2752 that our lodge is on Northwest 94th Street. We are bringing a donation for the city of Clive in the amount of $5,000 to go towards the Clive Greenbelt Trail. So we just wanted to come and present that. The Elks Lodge is a fraternal social organization that enjoys giving back to the community. We focus on first responders, on veterans causes, and children's charities. So we are proud to present a check of $5,000 to the city of Clive.
We very much appreciate that. I think we'll probably want to get a picture. And
Yes.
Richard, since it involves the green belt, you want to get in the picture as well? You guys raise the money?
We have a bingo program that meets every Thursday night and Sunday afternoon. And comes from that. And then also a grant from our national, what we call our Grand Lodge. So,
Well, we'll have your membership also in the picture as well. And
This is Michael Buckley, who's our president this year.
and then we've got Nancy Newcomb, Greg Radar Weinschenk, and Becky Young, who are, Greg and Becky are members of our board and trustees, and then Nancy runs our bingo.
very good, very good. I'll take that.
Also,
We apologize for, thank you.
You're fine, you're fine.
There are more cars in this parking lot than City Hall.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the wrong place.
Guys, we just,
Forgot to tell you, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
guys, just want to say that, Lodge 2752 has been a longtime friend of the city of Clive. We've had a great partnership for many, many years. We appreciate the great work you guys have done. I have many friends that are Elks, and please continue going strong. We support you 100%. Thank you so much for your kind donation.
thank you.
We should try and get you up there to see some of them friends at the Elks.
Just might have to do it.
Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Thanks for us interrupting you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks again. Sorry to throw everybody else off.
Yeah. Thanks again.
We gotta get back to being.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. There you go. Start at 7.
Now we got Jim up to talk about another public hearing of pavement and public notice. When ready.
Mayor, we also received bids last week on this year's arterial patching project. We'll be working on Berkshire Parkway north of Hickman, specifically at the Sheridan and Berkshire Parkway roundabout. Also on University Avenue at 142nd Street and at 138th Street intersections. Given those locations, the plans do call for the work to be completed overnight between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. at those locations. We received 6 bids. You have a tabulation of those included in the packet. School Trucking was red low. We have not worked with them in the past, but we did reach out after the bids, talked with them about the project and are comfortable moving forward with them. They also are under contract for a similar project with the city of West Des Moines this year. So with that, we'd be recommending award to School Trucking for the listed amount, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, Eric.
Jim, love to see, bids come in, where they are. I'm a little unfamiliar with School Trucking, and I read everything there. Did we discuss with West Des Moines? I mean, are they coming through in these projects? I'm always a little hesitant when we've never worked with a new contractor.
They have a local presence, which mainly is hence the name trucking. I mean, they've been around. In talking with them, they've done work on the interstate as a subcontractor. So I guess I can't really speak to their longevity, but they are here in the metro this year and are prepared to finish the work.
You're comfortable with them?
Absolutely.
Look, close public hearing. Second. Motion is second to close public hearing. For discussion, seeing none, will council please vote. And will clerk please post that vote.
Yes.
Yes. I do have a question, Mayor, when it becomes appropriate during the vote of the awarding.
Certainly. And the public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0. Michael?
Yeah, just, Jim, a question of similar lines with Eric, but do we ever call references on these? It's one thing, I get it. I appreciate you talking to the company and getting their familiarity with the project and all that, but sometimes that has bitten me as well, right? And I didn't check, if I just checked references, I would have known things were not good, right? So do we ever do that?
I mean, we don't require that they provide references. I suppose if we ask, they would. I mean, generally, we can ask around and get a pretty good flavor, and I think we did that in this instance.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just, with the ones that are unknown, I mean, I would hate to get into another graphite or roach situation and, not have done our research because they changed names or something like that. And easy one to avoid if we do reference checks. If, a company is someone we're unfamiliar with, as Eric said, that we just haven't worked with.
There's others on the list that we'd be having a different discussion tonight if they were low.
Got it. But that's a good example, right? I mean, we know that, but if nobody reached out to us for us to share that with them, they get caught in that race, and so just those references. And I know you called West Des Moines and such, but so in this one we're covered. It's just in the future, when you need to, I would say push it with references, right, of jobs they've done in the past.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. So public hearing is closed.
Move resolution approving plans to specs.
Second.
Motion is second to approve the resolution. Further discussion. Seeing none, will council please vote. And will
Yes, McCoy.
Yes, Michelini.
And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Receive the bids.
Second.
Motion is second to receive the bids. Further discussion. Seeing none, will council please vote.
Yes,
And
McCoy.
post that vote.
Yes, Michelini.
That passes by a vote of 5. That was quick.
It's getting faster.
Oh, good job.
Move the resolution awarding the contract to School Trucking for $418,691.
Second.
Motion is second on the resolution. Wording the contract. Further discussion. Seeing none. will
Yes,
council-
McCoy.
And will clerk please post that vote.
Yes, Michelini.
Give me 1 second. I just put
And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Jim. Next up, we have an overlay project that John's going to tell us about. And again, we did publish the appropriate public notice in the Des Moines Register. You can see reference. John.
Thank you, Mayor. On February 4th, the city received 4 bids for the 2025 Northwest 138th Street HMA overlay project. This project scope includes concrete patching along with a hot mix asphalt overlay of all of Northwest 138th Street and Lake Point Drive between Northwest 138th Street and where we stopped at Lake Point Drive reconstruction all the way north to Willow Drive to South Shore Drive. Based on the receipt of our bids, we are recommending the low bid of caliber concrete of a total of $770,789.72. This work is anticipated to be completed in the 2025 construction season. And with that, I would be glad to take any further questions.
Any questions for John?
Move to close public hearing?
Second. Motion and second to close public hearing. Further discussion. Being done with council, please vote.
Yes, McCoy.
Post that vote.
Yes, Michelinie.
I just like saying my last name because it has less vowels.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs?
Second.
Motion on the resolution. Further discussion. Seeing none, will the council please vote?
Yes, McCoy.
Post that vote. Srikant?
Yes, Michelinie.
And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the receipt of bids?
Second.
Motion and second to receive the bid. Further discussion. Seeing none, will the council please vote?
Yes, McCoy.
That vote. Srikant?
Yes, Michelinie.
And that passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution awarding the contract to Caliber Concrete for $770,780.72.
Motion and second on the resolution. Further discussion. Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will approve.
Yes.
Yes, Michelinie.
And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, John. Next up, we've got some furniture for City Hall. Matt.
Your Honor, as you know, you're in this space right now because the upper level of the City Hall library facility is being renovated. We actually have walls going up in that space right now and plumbing getting installed. And we'll have quite a noisy week next week with new stairs getting cut in. But as a part of that renovation over the last couple of months, we've been working on what the furniture layout would be for that space because we're changing and combining all the leisure services teams together, have a different layout to that space. So the need for different updated and different layouts of workstations, and also with the new council chambers, we're going to have a lot more flexibility to use that space for library and leisure services programming. And so we've, similar to what you see in this room, with tables that are on rollers, we'll have a certain set of chairs that would be physically locked in place in the front, and then the ability to have chairs that are on rollers to, again, be able to adapt the room fairly quickly. And since this is including all the council chambers furniture, we wanted to put it on the agenda for your review. We worked with the design team. Angie Fonku has been part of the DCI team, has helped us through this effort. We went with a state bid and the same vendor that we actually used for this building. So all makes, all steel furniture that you see here. We wanted to align with the same manufacturer, same kind of warranty set for our staff to work with them on, and kind of have some matching in terms of the systems that we're using at both buildings for our staff's support of that. So this is just for the phase one component. This would be a purchase agreement for both the acquisition of the furniture and the installation once the space is complete. This was included in the budget. It was planned for both phases, planned for furniture in the budget. This is in line. As the council knows, we received favorable bidding on phase 1, 2, phase 1, and feel like we'll be able to afford everything that we've laid out for this renovation. So with that, Your Honor, I'd be happy to answer any questions and would recommend approval.
Any questions from that? Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Matt, I always appreciate the adaptability to a changing structure and also the flexibility to deal with different situations, right? Question I have is what do we do with the current furniture that we're not gonna use anymore? What is it, what do we do with that?
So our plan is, one thing I've been thinking about, the old council chambers chairs that you all sat in is, potentially using that for a conference room to a lower level. When we do the phase 2 renovation, we wanted to have the new council, chairs to kind of match the aesthetic of what's in that main room. So a conference room will be able to reuse that furniture. The council chambers, chairs, because they didn't have rollers, we're actually gonna be putting them on gut deals to see if we can get some money for them. They just didn't give us the flexibility that we needed, so we wanted to go with. And also these are a little bit more comfortable chairs as you've been sitting in, that you can sit in for an extended period of time. So we've reused some of them at the Harbach Center, but our goal is, and with all of the office furniture and then the excess furniture is we'll sell it on gut deals.
Move to approve the resolution.
Do we have a second? Second. A motion, a second on the resolution. Further discussion. Ted?
Matt, you mentioned in your memo, the same vendor, so same warranty.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be longer because we've had this since 2021.
So what, can you give a little details on the warranty?
From what I remember, I know because we've had to do some work on these chairs was under warranty. There's a 12-year warranty on most of the equipment. Yeah, 12-year warranty. Some of the chairs, some of the mesh elements have a shorter warranty on it. So we had a few that were defective in this group, in this room. They're actually, all makes us taking care of that for us. So feel good with that. We've had a good relationship with them. And this also gives us good flexibility in the office spaces too, with this furniture too. It'll be similar to here where we have the stand-up, sit-down option for staff in that space too with the workstations.
Thank you.
Matt, is the furniture made in America or is it international?
All Steel is an American vendor, we're an American manufacturer. From what I recall.
Other questions? Otherwise, we're looking for a resolution. Yeah, we've got a
It's
motion.
been moved and seconded.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's been moved in a second. Will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote?
Yes, McCoy.
Yes, Michelinie.
And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Next up, we're moving to the budget. Liz, I think you're up.
I will kick it off, Your Honor, as we're getting the presentation up. Everybody's getting to the front here. We also have Suzanne here with us too from PFM as well, as we'll be getting into the utilities tonight. So this is the first of 2 workshops for the proposed budget, FY 2025-2026. Excuse me. Wanted to kind of kick it off here with the Public Works budget. Again, this is covering the road use tax fund and the 3 municipal utility funds. We have a lot to cover tonight regarding these funds, but I'll kick it off and then turn it over to Liz and Jeff and the rest of the group as we work through this presentation with you tonight. What's on the screen in front of you is our financial strategy related to these 2 funds. We discussed this during strategic planning, and you will see these strategies reflected in this presentation, particularly when we talk about the utility rankings. We are kind of on the lower tier now in terms of rates on water and sewer. Stormwater, we're higher, on one of the higher ends, as the council is well aware. But in terms of, we've progressed down the rankings on water and sewer, and we will believe we'll continue to do that with water. One of the big strategies that have come to fruition that I wanted to point out on the screen is the formal start of Central Iowa Waterworks. That was a big piece for this council in this region for a number of years, decade plus. And in particular, Clive having a governance seat at that table and now part of the executive committee as of the last meeting that Mayor Edwards is a part of. And so definitely have a strong voice on that group. And then of course, WRA you're very familiar with. One of the things that we'll talk about a little bit with road use too is, of course, that's a revenue from the state. a lot of the expenditures that can fluctuate. Of course, we had our first measurable snow yesterday, so we were saving a little bit on salt this year and did a little bit last year, so that's always helpful to our road use tax fund as we'll get into. But we'll talk about some challenges too in terms of our hope to do a special census this year and how that may be delayed or may not happen. We're not sure at this point, which would impact the revenues in that fund, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's kind of a little bit of a curveball for the road use tax fund that we'll talk about. But with that, I think you'll be happy to see what we're presenting here, and I'll turn it over to Jeff to kind of start with the Public Works overview of staff and equipment and operation. Jeff?
Thank you. First slide up here, I think the big one to talk about is the very bottom line. Last year, we were able to add 2 additional operation specialists, but critical in our ability to keep up with maintenance. It's been very much appreciated, and it's been something we've talked about for a long time, knew it was coming, and it finally was time. And again, it was the right time. And again, thank you. Next slide. As we look at our budget overall, there's some things that, if you looked at my previous 9 budgets memos, it's talked about growth. Well, we're getting close to the end of the growth, and now it's the deteriorating infrastructure that will be the challenge for us to keep up with. We've addressed some of it. We've talked about the streets in depth. I guess it's strategic planning last year. We've added some asphalt overlays. We're doing that out in the Country Club West area. Some big things like that while CIP related do impact us on the operation side. Along with those overlays, as we talked at the time, it would also require us to do additional maintenance, keeping up with the crack sealing on those overlays to make sure we get the most life out of them. So with that, the deteriorating infrastructure is one thing that every city is facing, but us being a little bit newer, we are getting there, and the budget reflects that as we look at what we're doing for maintenance, along with the 2 additional people that we added this last year.
Jeff, real quick, I know crack sealing is a key part of, slowing down and preventing the deterioration of the roads. You feel like you've got the right crew, the right amount of labor, and the right experience to complete that for this year?
Yes and no. Our crew is relatively younger. When I started here, there was a lot of really old people here. Now as we get tenured people, tenured. Well, they were old too. But and I'm one of them. So, and not meaning that, but yes. When you look at it now, though, over half our staff is less than 3 or 4 years old. It's a new staff. Brings with it lots of opportunities, young, energetic, wanting to learn, but also not quite as much experience. So it's a compromise. We're making progress. We have the people. I think one of the big things you see on the short-term budget request is a new air compressor. It is a 3rd air compressor. When you look at our operations, what we need air compressors for, we need it if we're going out crack sealing. We need it if we're going to be doing cold patching. We need it if we're building intakes. We need it if we're doing PCC patching. We need it if we're placing mastics. We do those things all at the same time and multi-days, multi-operations. And so we're getting cramped a little bit on our ability to do everything and have to adjust things because we're short an air compressor. So that's been added in here this year. And with the extra people and this equipment, it helps us keep up with those things. So that's probably the biggest add as far as equipment goes. No employees, no new requests for anything along additional staffing. No changes or requests from the CIP since December. The one thing that is in here that I would like to call attention to is Reclamite. It's an additive that you put on top of asphalt after you put it down. It makes the surface a little more flexible and extends the life of that asphalt overlay. I've got it in here to do about $20,000 a year to catch up on some of the asphalt overlays we've already put down. But eventually we'll start looking at it as we put the new surfaces down as part of the actual project when we do an HMA project. So that is one thing that's in here that, again, we're looking for ways to extend the life of that asphalt to get as much out of it as possible. So
Just getting back to, we made investment in a mastic machine, Jeff, and I like mastic. Have you had a chance to assess the durability of the mastic now that we're in 1-2 years with that, as far as how long it's lasting, how long it's holding up?
We're past the 3-year mark.
3 years.
Good results out of it. We also, if you look, one of the pilot programs we talked about was trying to seal some ends and driveways, some areas where we're having troubles with the overlays. We did some of that on 86th Street last year. Several of those driveways, if you want to go out, have been sealed with mastic and they're holding up well. We'll do that into some residential areas if there's some interested parties.
You're pleased with the durability and performance of the mastic?
Very much so. That was the reason we asked for it. It was something that was performing very well.
Thank you.
Next slide, real quickly. That's probably the biggest impact on the budget this year from our standpoint. One more slide. There we go. The capital equipment. As you know, we still struggle to get equipment. The dump truck that we ordered 2 years ago is still not here. They're just now producing the chassis this month. We probably won't get delivery of it until sometime this fall, if it's this fall. No, we've not paid for it yet. So yeah. Yep.
But interesting to that, something that we were talking about that we may look at, just in terms of steel prices and where those may go, is for our next dump truck, to lock in certain pricing on equipment and actually setting it aside so we have it before prices go up.
Alright, so just so I'm clear, so we ordered it 2 years ago, but we didn't lock in the price.
No, we did.
I mean,
We haven't
like,
ordered
right,
price. Yes.
but I'm more talking for the next one, that we may do some things a little different, or at least recommend to do things a little bit differently related to the actual equipment that we put on the truck, like the plow setup and everything, because we might be able to get that at a better price.
We've been trying to get a quote from them for some time, knowing how long it's taking. They've been unable to lock it in, and one of the reasons is the supplier that provides the box, the plows, and all the steel stuff that goes on it for attachments is unable to give a price after the first of this year, or after the end of this year. Knowing that they're going to have a price increase next year, knowing that steel prices are changing, especially with some, I guess, impacts on the national level that may impact the cost of steel coming into our country. So one of the things they're saying is we can give you a quote on what those materials would be now. You can buy them and pay for them now, and then we'll just install them when the truck and chassis gets here. So that's one of the things we'll be discussing, as Matt alluded to, as we bring that quote forward.
I just encourage staff as we look at these escalating prices, that, be creative, look at ways, think out of the box, look at ways that we can lock in prices, and I know you guys are doing that, but just continue that, thinking outside the box. If not, it's so difficult, especially when you look at these large capital expenditure. Dump trucks, ambulances, ladder trucks, I mean, take your pick, right?
Yeah, you did that, was it 2 council meetings ago, back in January for the sewer jetback?
Actually, December.
That was December meeting. Yeah, we wanted to get it before the end of the year, price increase. So we have kind of ordered ahead on some of these, just because it's taking so long to get them.
Gotcha.
And along those lines, we're also looking at our equipment. We don't want to run equipment down to where we're constantly fighting it, trying to keep out on the roads. We're also looking to get as much out of it as we can for a positive service life and keep things going. And with that said, we evaluated what was scheduled for replacement this year, about $750,000 of equipment that was scheduled this year. We pushed back and said, we'll wait at least one more year, if not more, and continue to evaluate that on a year-to-year basis. And I think that's something that's going to be important moving forward with the cost of equipment going the way it is. We're going to have to find a way to squeeze some extra life, and we can't reduce the cost of the equipment up front, but we can maybe reduce the annualized cost by trying to get a few more years out of some things as we move forward.
Jeff, do you see the dual usage of the Urbandale Maintenance Facility, helping prolong our equipment, kind of doing those type of repairs in-house? Is that going to help prolong that, give us some extra time on that?
Not sure.
That, the repairs would just be, we have our own in-house mechanic, and that would just be related to fire equipment.
Yeah, I didn't know if down the road we're looking at potentially utilizing public works for that same opportunity we're doing with fire.
Yeah, though, there could be the opportunity for that. We do have, at least in-house right now, the ability to have a jack that will lift our plows. We don't have one big enough to do a fire engine like Urbandale does. But yeah, I think, council member, as we go forward, and this will be a theme that you're going to hear from me throughout both of these budget workshops, is over the next few years, it's going to be incumbent upon all cities, particularly all of us together on the west side, to really start evaluating a lot of things in terms of potential service collaborations. Of course, we're doing a lot of that on fire and EMS right now. We've talked in the past too about, joint fuel purchasing. They have a fuel station there. They have one out west. We've had some, I know Jeff's had some preliminary conversations with Urbandale's Public Works director about that in the past, but those are going to be some of the conversations that'll continue and probably need to ramp up in given the financial future that's in front of us.
That's part of that out of the box thinking, being inventive, looking at regionalization, looking at ways we can work with and partner with our sister cities, our peers out there to just be more efficient in difficult times.
And it's something we've done for years. If you look at some of our agreements with snow plowing operations, rather than both of us going up one side of a street on shared streets, we have agreements with all our neighboring communities to say, okay, we'll take both ways on this one, you take both ways on this one, minimize the distance we travel and we still get the job done. So we will continue to look for those opportunities.
I want to talk to you about the financials. So the road use fund is in front of you there. Revenues have been kind of up and down for the last 4 years. Overall, a slight increase of 4.25% over those 4 years. And Matt alluded to the 2025 census, and I will talk about that at the end of the slide here. But really the overall expenditures growth was 19% the past 4 years, and that averaged out to the 4.75% per year average. You can kind of see from the math, easy, right? The expenditures are really outpacing the revenues. So that's something that we are monitoring and reviewing, obviously. In 24, the council approved the city manager's proposal to go ahead and move the street lighting 100% over to the general fund. And previously it was half of that, so the 108. And based on our projections that we're monitoring, we're looking at projecting an increase in that census. So I want to go back to the census real quick. So we're looking at jumping to 3.3% in revenue for the 2025 census. That was what we were projecting. And the city council has already paid $391,000 to the federal government to do our census. As you know, that's been delayed. We're on a hiring freeze. And so, like Matt said, we're not sure if it's going to be just delayed or if it's never going to happen. Our cities in our surrounding area have started, some have started the process and they will continue those. But for us, we're making a request to get that an exception, I guess is what Matthew had said to me today. An exception to that rule. And if not, then we're going to probably have to ask for our money back. So more to come on that. But what we were trying to indicate is that we were looking at projecting our revenue increases of $102,000. And it would take about 2.5 years to get all of our money back from the per capita amount that we would be getting in the road use fund. So that is not great news, but that is where we're at. Next, we're going to talk about the utilities. So
Just real quick on the road use tax fund, as I mentioned earlier, when you look at the cash flow with the census, we're sitting in a pretty good spot with the road use tax fund. Now, as we'll talk about with the general fund at the next workshop, that 200,000 that's over there for street lighting. That might be something that we might need to look at in the future in terms of flexibility between these funds. Now, that special census doesn't happen and we don't see that revenue bump for the next 5 years, that will create challenges in the road use tax fund. So we've got some external pressures on us that we don't really have any control over, both at the state level and the federal level, but there's some balancing that we can do between the funds. It's not ideal, but there is some opportunities there. So hopefully we do have our special census and able to see that 2.5-year payback, which still makes really good sense for us and why we made that investment. But it's just something to keep in mind as we go along even to the general fund side of the budget at the next meeting.
Those streetlights will just keep haunting you, won't they?
Yeah, they will.
Okay, so the water utility utility fund is stable. That's good news. And we're looking to increase the general water sales revenue $120,000. Our cash flows were produced by PFM. Thank you to Jen and to Suzanne. The water has sufficient capacity to hold the current expenses in the future future debt with very small changes in the rates. We were proposing to reduce the water rate to 2%. And we predicted a year ago that we would do 3% this year. So that's good news as well. Most of those cost efficiencies are due to moving and joining Central Iowa Water Works. So that's good news too. So on the cash flow, you will see an area on the cash flow that was darker. It was kind of a darker gray, and that shows you what was going on with Des Moines Water Works. So it kind of shows you a comparison. I want to draw your attention to that. And you can see really why it made a lot of sense to move to Central Iowa Water Works. Utilities supports all of our CIP items such as water main repairs, replacements, and then also the University Avenue pump station on 78th Street. And then also on the slide, I wanted to show you that, of course, we wanted to make sure that our SQR projects are budgeted for, and also the tree planting cost share programs are included. And then just that last bullet is the 2% rate increase rather than 3% that we're planning.
As the council will recall, we implemented the tiered irrigation rate as part of that revenue. We focused in SQR tree planting area. So that's why you see that transfer into those areas. Very successful programs.
And then we showed this last year, not much change. I will tell you that our customer calls were very minimal when we did change the tiered rate system in July of 23. You can see from this illustration that we see a little reduction in residential and commercial usage, but we're really not sure if that is a result of, of the wet spring, or if the rate structure was the result of all of that. So we're going to track that, and we should have some more time there to do that. And then also, if you look, we just have had a couple different we're just getting more wet months later in the season. So that's kind of hard to track. Over time, we should see some more changes in behavior, and hopefully by joining Central Iowa Water Works, we'll just continue to monitor and revisit the rates moving forward.
We talked about with you all is we implemented kind of that first stage of tiered rates for irrigation, kind of wanting to see what happens with Central Iowa Water Works now that we're implemented. Mayor Edwards can speak to this, that board has stood up, I think it's a working group or a best practices working group, I think, Your Honor, is what it's called, related to evaluating how do we reduce the demand side of the equation, not just building new water production. I don't know, Mayor, if you want to speak at all to that. That'll be an important part of the discussion on this utility in the future.
Yeah, there have been many discussions about the capacity is driven largely by irrigation. And do we want to spend literally millions of dollars just to add that kind of capacity? Interesting fact that they've shown was that in Windsor Heights, for example, their actual demand for water has decreased over time. So the assumption is, it's going to increase, but Windsor Heights decrease. So anyway, they're studying all those different aspects of the water actual.
So talking about the rate, at the current rate, Clive is at the same mid spot that we were last year. We jumped up above Norwalk on the commercial side. Our buy-in to the Central Iowa Water Works system is much smaller than the other communities in the area. In the metro, we're fortunate that our rates are in the lower tiers, whereas theirs, as you can imagine, will inevitably go up for that same reason. Now I'll have Suzanne come up. She's going to talk about the future rates that were proposed in the cash flows.
Yeah, so since PFM does work with many of the cities, maybe all of them, on the list, I did take a peek at what is in the budgets for some of the other cash flows. And I can tell you that there is one city on the list that has lower rates than you currently that did not choose to join Central Iowa Water Works, that will now be building their own water plant and has 10% plus rate increases for the foreseeable future to pay for that. So this list is probably going to look a little different when we see this next year after all the other communities approve their rate increases. The ranges that I saw when I looked through, Clive's doing 2%. That was the lowest rate increase of all of the communities on the list that I checked. And the others range from 2.5 all the way to, as I mentioned, 10.5. But I would say the average being probably right around 5%. There were some that have taken the approach that they're changing rates differently for non-irrigation than they are for irrigation, because I think irrigation is a very important topic. And so some are increasing irrigation rates in larger measure than the non-irrigation rates. I've seen that in multiple cash flow versions. And so the 2% that we are proposing for the Clive Water Fund, it represents 90 cents per month for your average residential user. So that's a modest, less than cost of living increase, I would say, based on current CPI anyway. So yeah, and I think that this, and we don't have any significant changes. We are waiting the new CIP from Central Waterworks that was just received. That may change the forecast, but based on what we know today, I think that we're in really good shape going forward. And the rate is not quite half of what you're going to be paying per 1,000 gallons. The other thing for water that I did want to mention, we've talked about now that Central Iowa Waterworks, they bill differently than Des Moines Waterworks did. Des Moines Waterworks just billed you based on what you purchased and what flowed through. Central Iowa Waterworks has two components to their rate that we want to mimic in Clive's rate structure just as a best practice. There'll be a fixed portion that's related to debt service. And then it's the flow portion based on the consumption of the community. And so since the current rate structure is all variable, we want to change that mix. We already do this in the sewer fund, so it's not a new concept for Clive. It's just something that hasn't been part of the water system in the past. It will now be fixed costs every month. And then the rest will be variable based on flow. So we'll be coming back next year with probably a rate structure recommendation or some options for the council.
There's a risk for us staying just with a 100% variable rate. We have, again, a substantial wet year. We still have to pay that debt service cost, even if the variable costs go down. And so that's why the sewer utility was set up that way. It's WRA, the largest chunk of the WRA expense is the debt. And both of these regional utilities are looking at over $1 billion CIPs for the next 20 years. And so that'll be something very important for us to monitor. We feel that that my intent is to propose that to you in the next strategic planning for priority to come back this time next year with that updated rate structure. And I think then that is also an opportunity too, as we get familiar with Central Iowa Waterworks, to see if there is a council desire to, like some other communities are doing, is when we look at rate increases, not necessarily looking at the blanket 2% across the board. Is there the modulating we want to do based on irrigation rates versus the regular water rate? So that will be up for consideration as well, that we'll want to talk about.
Yep, I'll come back up in a little bit, sure. So now we'll talk about the sewer utility fund. We got it up there. So again, stable revenues. The budget shows no significant changes to the city's internal costs associated, but our outside factors are obviously what Matt talked about with the WRA and the debt that we'll be experiencing. Clive experienced a slightly higher flow increase, and the other WRA members' growth in the flow was a little bit less than Clive's, but rate increases are needed due to the debt obligations of the WRA and our capital projects, of course, that we also have, and equipment needs. We're projecting capital projects in the future as part of the sewer main replacement program. We're also looking at sewer to replace and supplement road rehab and staff positions that we've added in the past. So staff's proposing a 4% increase, and what we were planning to increase, showing a 4% increase and then increasing the rates to 5.5 in the future in 2027-28.
I heard the chair rock.
Yes, appreciate Councilmember McCoy being the chair of WRA. I think this was a little bit of an odd year for us on the sewer side, just because now that Grimes has been fully in. Now we're kind of adjusting back to normal. So everybody's flow rate's going up a little bit just for equalizing, and also the tech committee review, there was an adjustment that we had to make to the Grimes flow. So all of us felt a little bump in the flow. That's kind of, and it was a little bit of a wetter year too, as well. So we don't see this to be trend, a huge trend for us. We continue usually to be a little bit less of the chunk of the pie. This was kind of just an anomaly of normal year. But even with the 4%, as Liz will share, we're still sitting really good in terms of our competitors.
What would help me maybe in the future is, we've seen a 2% for water, 4% for sewer. If you could also outline what we've done like the last 3 to 5 years.
So the cash flow actually shows
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So it's in the top right corner of each of the cash flows, shows the history of all the rate increases.
Too small.
And the projections moving
So
out.
for example, for the water fund, we have actually been at 3% every year for about the last 6 years, and we went down to 2%. And then on the sewer utility, we were at 2% the last number of years. So that's why this 4% is a little abnormal for us. And I won't steal Suzanne's thunder on what she's going to say about the future. She probably want me to share it more than, because it's not pretty for the WRA with the CIP that they have coming down the line.
Yes. So at our current rates, Clive moved above Johnston from last year in residential, and we remained in the same spot on the commercial side. It'll be increasing or interesting to hear what you have to say about Grimes and the biogas project revenue, effective revenue. So
One thing
I'll
I'll
let you
note
go
on this
ahead.
table real quick too
Mhm.
is we wrestled with how do we equate it, but Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District actually charges a property tax levy. So that's why their rate looks drastically lower than everybody's.
On
So
your
one that
slide.
Liz and I have kicked around is maybe adjusting this table to do an estimate of what that tax levy would be for the average household to see if we could do a little bit more apples to apples. My guess would be they'd actually probably be at or above us. So it'd only be it'd be kind of us and West Des Moines right below. But anyway, we're gonna work on that one for the future.
Ooh, that jumped fast. What is happening?
I don't have good luck with my Zoom.
Okay. What's
So
going on
when
here?
we,
Hang on a
okay, that's
second.
okay, we'll get you there. And so as Matt alluded to, the WRA CIP, so as an example, in fiscal 26, the budgeted amount of total debt service for the city of Clive just for WRA is $1,258,000. In the 5-year projection by fiscal 2031, that will be $2.53 million. That's the CIP that we're talking about in the WRA. And this is a conservative, I would say, worst case, because we tend to get through, the WRA tends to get through those projects a little bit slower than what's in the schedule in the CIP, just because of the vendors and the ability to get everything done. So this, I would say, is a worst case scenario, which is why I'm not recommending a 5.5% this year or next year, because I want to see some of those projects materialize and get bid and get in the proposed before we start raising rates before we need to. And that's just my opinion. I think 4% is a happy medium between, well, we don't want to wait and do 2%. I don't think we're in the days of 2% because the CIP is coming. But I think it's a little premature to say 5.5% today. And so just to let you know, that's why it's 4% today. And in a couple of years, if these projects start to materialize, 5.5% may be the new norm. Now, the good news is that you still have you have the second lowest rate increase on the list, and the lowest goes to the highest rate on the list. So the rates range, I would say on average, 7.5% is the average rate increase for WRA for a lot of those communities on the list, with Clive being at 4% and a couple being at 5 or 5.5%, one 10%, and one at 1%. It's already at the top of the list. So, and so this is going to be an ongoing discussion. Obviously, that CIP is considerable. Biogas revenues will hopefully help mitigate how the biogas is used. You probably have had more recent discussions than I have, but
It's fine. Yeah, it's buying down debt.
it's paying down debt. Yeah.
And I think a key for us too, and why our rate stays fairly competitive, is we cash fund all of our capital projects out of all 3 utilities. So we don't have any revenue debt, or even in the abatement. We're about to pay off the last little bit of our water abated debt.
Yep.
And so we're one of the few that is cash funding all of our capital projects. So we're not bearing that interest cost, particularly in this environment.
Mhm.
is very beneficial to our utilities.
And you don't have to maintain as high of a coverage. You just have the WRA coverage of 110 versus if you have revenue bonds, it would be higher, especially with your high credit rating, it would be much higher even than the minimum requirements. And so some of your neighbors do have revenue bonds outstanding that require 1.5 or 175 if they have a AA or higher credit rating. And so those are also,
Got set up.
it's a lot of cash. Yeah.
Only if we had a chairperson who didn't spend money like a drunken sailor.
So any.
You gotta spend money to be great.
Rock and roll on that budget.
And so the 4%, did want to mention, the 4% does equate to roughly $1.65 per month. So combined, we're at $2.55 between water and sewer right now for your average household for the fiscal 26 budget.
All right, we'll go on to stormwater. Great, thank you. So if you remember last year, we set up the ERU value and we increased it from the 3,667 square feet to over 4,000, 4,100. And now with some recent issues with correcting some inaccuracies of the ERU calculations for commercial accounts, we spent a lot of time this last probably 6-8 months working on a methodology and some guidelines that have been proposed to you in your packet. And I will come back to that in a moment. As far as the cash flows, they show that the water resource plan is being implemented. So we made sure that we identify and we reflect that, the inspections and the grant program. And then we are maintaining the CEP by contributing to the dump trucks by $70,000 a year. And our substantial investments in our capital expenses are between $520,000 and $580,000 a year. And there's the listed projects that are included on the slide for you. We're proposing a change in the ERU for billing for commercial tax rate payers that represent a 3% increase overall. And going back now to the methodology that's in your packet. This issue has been prioritized. It was prioritized during strategic planning this year. Staff has researched best practices. They've been looking at other cities, developing formal guidelines to ensure that the ERU calculations for both commercial and residential properties. So I do want to thank Corey Eastman. So our finance manager has led the charge and worked with the GIS coordinator or GIS Corey Phillips and Amanda. I don't see her here tonight. For long periods, worked really, really hard at putting together this policy. So I want to thank you for that. And so they put together the methodology and the proposed policy statement that you have in front of you really it has some definitions on the impervious. It has exemptions. There's a process for billing. I mean, it really kind of lays out how we are going to handle these accounts in the future. So with that, I'm going to have Corey come up and give you an example and maybe speak a little bit more to some of the details.
As Corey's coming up, I'll just put a small font readers, our history on the stormwater use. So we're proposing a 3% rate increase, showing 3s for the next couple of years and 4s out, but the past has been 7, 10, 10, 10. So we are bringing some of those previous. Yes, I do. I know you do.
Yeah, that's well noted, and we certainly looked at that as well. So that's great relief for the citizens. But we all understand that we had to have those higher percentages, double-digit percentages to play catch up, and where are we now? And I think the painful part is behind us. So really, this comes in line with the rest of the percentages that 2, 3, 4%, whatever it is. So well received.
All right. Thank you. What's being displayed now is the West Ridge Shopping Center, and I'll highlight that. I'll come back to that and cover it a little bit more in detail. But what we were tasked with is residential is working fine. You know, we've come to terms with how we're going to handle it, and it works well. What we didn't expect was our commercial to come back around and smack us in the back of the head when we weren't paying attention. And that's exactly what happened. We had a lot of variables within our equation that opened up a lot of doors for some errors, and that's exactly what happened. And that's why we had to give out some refunds in the last fiscal year. So we were tasked with
how can we make commercial better? And instead of trying to put the square peg into the round hole, let's try to make it simpler. Let's take out a lot of the human contact. Let's let the system do what it's supposed to do. So as we all got together and we started kicking around ideas, the first thing we wanted to talk about was possibly going to a tax parcel-based system. All of our commercial owners pay taxes on the parcel that they own. Where we didn't keep that straight in the ERU world was we were using site maps, where site maps go over boundary lines. So that caused some overlaps and some, once again, we opened up that door for some errors to take place in our calculations. So now, as I'll show you on what the methodology that was presented to you in your packet, what this should do. So on the then the yellow is going to be Coles. And then to the right, northeast of that is going to be Fairway. And then the parcel down below that actually houses 13 entities. So previously, how this would happen is we would figure up the ERUs for all three of those parcels. And we would divide it out by the 6 water meters located in all 3 buildings. So if you were Coles and Fairway, you were getting a sweet deal. If you were Little Caesars around the corner, you were paying a little bit more than your fair share. So what we are proposing is if we go to a tax-based system, Coles will actually pay for the parcel that they own. They're already paying taxes on it. Why not pay the stormwater that relates to that? Same way with Fairway to the north. And then down to the bigger parcel where there's 13 owners within that building. This kind of goes back when we went to visit Willis Auto. Matt and I met with their finance lead, and he basically said, don't do the math for us. Give us the full bill. We already have equations that we have to calculate to bill out to our different entities. For them, it's for the dealers that they're working with to sell the vehicles. Here, it's going to be the landlord is going to have to split it out to the 13 occupants. When the city gets involved and does the math, as you can tell, we weren't splitting it up equally. We were looking at the giant parcel. And the ERU, I mean, if I was one of the 13, I wouldn't feel like I was getting the best out of my stormwater fee. So with that change, as you can see, I believe it's a Starbucks down in the southeast corner of this property. That is also one of the challenges of the ERUs. We have multiple more of the shopping centers where the site plan said that I had parking lots clear away from me, even though my customers aren't going to be parking there to come into my business. So this is going to actually help with the fairness, and it's going to put the burden back on the owner who's already splitting up rent and other utilities to their tenants. Now they're just going to add stormwater. The other big change is now, if you're not, even if you are owner occupied, so say Coles and Fairway, they do own and occupy their space, you're now going to get 2 bills. One, you're going to get the water utility bill that's going to have everything on it now with the exception of stormwater. And then you're going to get a bill for the stormwater that will show your calculation of ERUs. So you'll have 2 bills instead of 1. With talking to mail services who does our mailings for water bills, and then Amanda and Corey were able to get a quick parcel count. Our costs of mailing out 2 bills is not going to be significant to us at all. So that was one of our roadblocks. You know, do we keep it on a monthly basis? After we saw the final count come in, yeah, we're going to keep it on a monthly basis. It also keeps it consistent with our revenues coming in for any cash flows, any analysis that would be asked of us to provide. We can give it on a monthly basis instead of anticipating the next quarter payment. So with that, if there's any questions about the methodology, yes.
So Corey, is it safe to assume then that property owners like Coles or Fairway are going to see a pretty substantial increase in their billing as a result of this?
They could, yes.
And so how are we communicating?
That is once this is gets the blessing, we are going to rely heavily on our communications team. We have multiple ways of communicating. One, we have the entire water bill. We know letters are going to go out to every commercial owner, and then we're going to do the special touches for the ones who are going to see a significant increase, we are going to.
Sticker shock.
No, and we don't want those phone calls either. Because then it's emotion and we're trying to be, responsible and try to keep it at a professional level that, no, you're actually paying the same what you actually own. So we will be doing a lot of mass mailings. We will be doing a lot of communications with the newsletter, the water bills, get as many touches as we can.
Our utility billing folks talking them through any changes. One thing with this policy too.
Obviously, we need to talk before they get their.
Yes.
bill.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
One thing that's also included in this policy is just clean up on, what is impervious. For example, like gravel, compacted gravel, we hadn't been treating that in the area calculation, but water runs off of it, it doesn't absorb. And so that was some of the things that we realized when we were doing some of these cleanups, some of these commercial accounts. So I particularly want to give a shout out to Corey and Amanda too, because one thing we realized is how can we better automate this process and not have as much human touch to the numbers and have it kind of flow through the system and then eventually to Corey and the utility billing team and have that seamless. Because of the ability of those staff folks, along with Corey, the Corys and Amanda, we were able to come up with this policy for you. And so if this is our biggest question, as we'll get to at the end, is how your comfort level with this, knowing that we have a lot of communication touches to do, but we really see this as the kind of the final forefront of cleaning up some of the CU work and kind of bringing that same fairness principle that we brought with the residential tiers to you last year.
This takes effect July.
To be, it would be May rates, June billing, July receivables, like we always do.
That was pretty good.
So this will be, done it a few times. It would be spring. So it'd be a important communication in the springtime. Yep, it'll come pretty fast.
Two more groups to be aware of that are going to have some touch here. One would be the town home associations. If they have some impervious today that was eligible but wasn't being captured, this could generate a bill specifically to the association for their stormwater that they previously had received. However, this is the second point. The council was very clear during the water resources master planning process that you did not want to have private streets included as a part of the calculation of their total impervious area and then how they work on ERUs. So that's actually quite a bit more complex to carve that out and come up with the guidance for when it's a private street versus when it's a parking area. And so there'll be made some determinations with some good work by Amanda and the Corys to get that sorted out, but that's going to generate some communications to those groups. But I want the council to know that your policy direction around private streets was absolutely adhered to as we made those calculations.
Comments, thoughts, concerns, questions?
I think it's the right approach. Yeah. And I do too. And I agree with Ted that communication is really critical on this to, get in front of this and make sure they understand it. Sure, we're very helpful, but, sticker shock is the worst aspect of policy change. So as long as we get ahead of it, I think it's fair. I think we need to move forward.
And I would like to comment to council because we did give those refunds. Everyone we commented on, they were very appreciative that we did give the refund back and we just didn't keep it and keep quiet about it. So they were very appreciative. So we feel our communications that we've already reached out will go over very well.
And that gave us an opportunity too to test this idea. When we sat down with the CFO Willis, kind of said, how do you feel about this? And they all lean towards do the parcel base, let us figure it out. So we're not trying to parse out a parking lot of a multi-retail center and potentially getting it wrong. Let's do it on a parcel basis and let us figure it out and work with our tenants on it. So
Yeah, that just
the
makes
key
sense
there
too.
for us.
Let them do it, we don't want to micromanage their business. We don't want to get that deep in the weeds.
Yeah.
Just opens ourselves up for problems.
Thanks,
Thank you.
So now we're just showing the current rates. Again, we will stay at the bottom, obviously, for all of the infrastructure improvements that we are dedicated to making with the water resources master plan. The future rates for Suzanne.
Yeah,
same
so
kind of
there-
position, right?
Yeah, so there are two communities that have rate increases in stormwater this year. West Des Moines has a 50-cent rate increase on the list. And Waukee had 9% in their cash flow. So there are projects, stormwater projects are not cheap. Some communities are choosing to do SRF funding for some of the more substantial projects. But you're not the only one that has stormwater projects, obviously. And yeah, Clive will continue to probably be one of the highest other than the city of Des Moines as we continue on. But West Des Moines, again, will have 50 cents on the list, and then Waukee, or I'm sorry, yeah, Waukee will have not quite 10% on the list. So, but cash flow looks good, and I think that's what's needed. So, if you have any questions for me.
One thing we'll do in that second budget presentation too, when we show you the tax rate combined with all the utilities, we'll show you the total package of everything together. I know that's, of course, Clive's got a unique situation in terms of our investment in stormwater with the green belt and the council's focus on water resources master plan. When you look at it in terms of where we rank water and sewer, you look at the utility bill itself, we're fairly competitive. So even though we're higher on this rate, it's just kind of, I had to say that it equals out, but it's something that the scale of this one versus the scale of the water and sewer one are quite a bit different.
I don't know. Did you say, Suzanne, that one of the other cities went up 10%? Is that about 10%? Yeah, okay. On the next slide, excuse me. So again, street lighting expense have been dropping, which is great. 216, and that came down from $224,000, and we think that's due to LED retrofitting throughout the community. Always an option to move the street lighting, like you said, back to the road use fund instead of the general fund. So we feel like financial stresses will dictate that in the future. But this fund is supported through those property taxes. So, and then the next is our action items or a request from council. Do you approve of the 2% increase for water, 4% for the sewer rate, and then 3% for the stormwater? And then we also want to find out if you have any feedback on drafting the calculation policy statement. So we would bring that back to the council at a future meeting if you so desire.
So how are we gonna need? McCoy?
No questions.
Are we good with the 2, 4, and 3% increase? Yeah. Water, sewer.
I did, yeah, I did hear.
Okay. Now the ERU. Are you good with the ERU?
Yes. Yeah, that was a very complex project. And so if nothing went wrong, I would have been shocked and asked what we did that nothing went wrong. So, the commercial stuff and the figuring out the problems, that's minor. At least we moved forward and we're fixing it.
Very good. Susan?
My only question on ERU is what if there's some disagreement between, for example, when you have 13
Yeah.
owners, how will that be migrated?
Right. The first step would be they can contact the city. We like to have open communication lines. The next step would be they would be asked to provide a survey built as or an actual property survey. And that goes for residential as well. And if we still can't come to a resolution or agreement on what the actual ERU for the property is, then it goes back to how the rest of this, anytime you have a grievance with the city, we go through the city clerk to process and it eventually comes before the council.
Okay.
But first and foremost, we would like to have the communication up front with the resident and the property owner.
How does wanted to hear that there was an appeal process if a mistake was made.
Ultimately,
And that's
you all-
included in the policy statement.
So inconsistent with what you've already approved with the residential process, the council gave us direction that you didn't want to have, force folks to go get some sort of survey done of their property, that was gonna just be an unnecessary high hurdle and expense. And so similarly here with those discussions, they may choose to do something like that, but when policy is written as it's not required. So that we can take a more pragmatic approach.
But I think the focus needs to be, like we had, there's a process, being able to work it out with staff beforehand, so we don't have to, the business don't have to incur extra expense. Does have to come appear before council, but that's the way to take care of this, it's a common sense basis.
So in summary, you can see the next steps for action. With your approval, road use and the utilities will be incorporated in the overall budget. And the dates of the events are listed there for you. Our next workshop is our next council meeting. Then the deadline for getting the proposed tax hearing language to the county assessor is March 5th. So we will have some conversations about that at next meeting. On March 27th, we'll have that tax hearing at 5:30. And then we'll have the regular council meeting will set the public hearing for the budget. And that will be April 10th. Gave us a little bit of time before that April 30th state mandated deadline to submit the budget to the county auditor. We wanted to just build in a little bit of extra time since we, just like I said, had issues with publication in the past. So we want to do that. And then, of course, give some time for public input process as well in this process. So we'll have you vote on increasing water rates. That'll also start on April 10th. And we want to make sure that that's all finalized by May so that we can collect in July. So with that, if you have any questions about any piece, we're all here.
Any further questions?
Thank you. Ryan. Thank you. Workshop number 1. Number 2 at the next meeting. That'll be the big one. Lots to talk about there too.
Next up on our agenda is a closed session. Neil, what do you want to tell us about it, or Matt?
The staff would request the council go into closed session related to strategy matters with collective bargaining negotiations.
Approval.
Motion is second, go into closed session, consistent with Iowa Code section 20.17. Further discussion? If not, would the council please vote? And with clerk, please post that.
Yes.
That's just 5-0. We will move it to closed session. Michael, you can call Matt, he can call you when you got first.
Yeah, I'll call him. Or what do we got? A couple minutes or no?
Yeah, a couple minutes, just because some folks might hit the restroom.
Okay, all right. Can I get off of this Zoom then? Or no, probably not.
He's going in there too. I mean, he could.
You could.
And then he log back in. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get off, connect to us, just audio, and then, sing back in afterwards.
Okay, risky, but I'll try it.
Okay.
At least for us.
Yes. Chief provided those.
That's-
All right,
We're gonna move the fire conference room. We can go this way.
Oh, that way.
Either way works. Hey, Suzanne. Good, just on the closed session. Clay, if you join the Elks, I'll join you.
So. Metropolitan area of Phoenix, do you have an area? My sister and like, okay. No? Okay. Okay, that's going to be fun. Okay, so you're just far, like. Oh, so, okay, no, no, no. Because I think that, yeah, it's been.
Peoria is basically, it's like Clive and something.
Oh, okay, okay, well, then never mind, I just, I'm a sister and a brother, and like a brother and niece, that sister, and.
Okay.
In Greek, and she was in, up in the northern part of Phoenix for 20+ years before they fled. And she bought a house in Lisa, so I was very. It's the business, yeah.
Oh, I know they're right now.
Well, they're trying to get all the snowbirds in for talking about their moment.
Oh, yeah.
So that's.
There's actually, so city of Peoria, Arizona was founded by people from Peoria. Really? Was that right?
Really?
And they have it with water.
Yeah.
And it's good. Okay, I'm sure you get that a lot too. Okay.
Yeah, they have some under your plans, like, water conservation programs. So like, for example, if you have some water availability, then you cannot think, well, it used to be just more well, right?
Yeah.
You know, ultra water, they don't allow that anymore. So.
Yeah.
The water drains off, like, so. Well, I had to run. Right.
Yeah, when we were looking, I would just ask.
What have we got? Oh, yeah.
Well, I'd ask my siblings, and like, okay, where should we be looking and where not to look? And there was particularly one, they said, we were like, well, it's heated, and they said, oh, that does not. People will.
So, I would say, like, the areas changed quite. Right, so like my cousins live in Scottsdale, like right near Paradise Valley. And we call this Victoria, like, Porterra area, which is like almost the place.
Did they say the same thing? That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, it's just,
Okay.
it's kind of the old perception, right? That all, like, there's so much, I mean, that's where all fruit is. One of those, like, like surveys, like highest values and codes in the metro area.
Yeah.
One of them actually listed in Peoria. But like second or after American Valley. So.
Good. Good. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't want to keep you from the closed session, but I just got there and visit with you. So I was like,
Yeah.
you don't know what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, no,
That was
we've been scrambling to learn a lot about things there, so.
good. Good. Well, congrats. to you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Get ready to go.
Yeah, you're supposed to go right around the corner. Yep. Are you taking them?
Doing it in here? Yeah. That's what you.